Golden State Media Concepts Fantasy Football Podcast is your one-stop shop for fantasy football news and advice. Can't decide on who to draft on the first round? Going gaga on how to line up your team. We've got you covered. Traditional league, dynasty league, PPR league, IDP league, even daily fantasy football league. Join us as we break down all the questions of fantasy football. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Fantasy Football Podcast.
Hey everybody, we are back at the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Ryan Basulto, and we are here to talk about the draft. Yes, the NFL 2021 draft, not 2020. We're over 2020 now. The NFL 2021 draft. It is here. It is on Thursday through Sunday, specifically April 29th to May 1st on NFL Network, ESPN, and ABC. This stuff is about to get good. We've already broken down lists that said who were the best quarterbacks, the best running backs out of the draft, the best receivers out of the draft. So today we're mainly just going to talk about the biggest news leading up to the draft because like I said, social media is a great asset and a great tool to help out everyone in this day and age, but it does ruin any spoilers or anything that could come with the NFL draft. Yes, it's going to be interesting to see where some teams draft, but we already know where other teams and where their vision is set on and what players they are looking to start their NFL future with. So we are going to go over some of that NFL news. Daniel Jeremiah, one of the NFL's biggest draft analysts, he had a conference call, a Zoom meeting, for about an hour and a half. So I listened to the whole conference call, and these are 7 takeaways, or not even 7, just some takeaways that I got out of that conference call in particular. And then at the end of the draft, or at the end of the episode, if you stick around, we are actually going to talk about the biggest bust in NFL history. Yes, they're all not the best. There was Jamarcus Russell. There was I say Vince Young. Some people I was talking to said Vince Young wasn't because he was a Pro Bowler. But no, Vince Young was a big draft, big bust. He was supposed to come out of Texas to be one of the most prolific dual threat quarterbacks of all time. He beat one of the best college football teams of all time in USC during the national championship in 2005. Yes, that was the first moment I cried at a sports event. I was stunned that this man, Vince Young, and to his credit, it wasn't all him. They had Jamal Charles on the team, Michael Griffin on the defensive end. They had some studs. They had Brian Orakpo too. They had a lot of studs on that team, a lot of NFL talent, but doesn't hide away from the fact that that guy was only there for a couple years, only threw for 8,000 yards total, which, by the way, Tom Brady has thrown for more yards than Vince Young in his past 2 years in the 40s than Vince Young did throughout his whole career. So don't tell me he's not a bust. But yes, we're going to get into that. We're going to talk about the bust. We're going to talk about all that. But first, let's turn it up and let's talk about some NFL news. Reports are going around that there are rumblings. Ooh, rumble. Yes, there have been rumblings around the NFL that Arizona is trying to trade up into the draft, actually, to obtain a wide receiver. They have a lot of options. They have Jamar Chase. They could try to go for, well, I don't know. Jamar Chase can be the first wide receiver off the board, but they could try to get Devontae Smith, Jalen Waddle. If they like Rondale Moore, they could get him for a speedy guy. the point is the Arizona Cardinals feel like they feel as if their weapons aren't enough, which I don't ever understand because they have AJ Green. Isn't that the boy that they just got? He's only 31. He's old to me. To me, he's very, very old. But with the 16th pick, you're not going to be able to get many people because it looks like the Giants, the Lions, and either the Bengals, Falcons, or Dolphins are all going to get a wide receiver. And if they want Jalen Waddle, who has a lot of potential, no player in this draft has, produced more when given the opportunity over his career. He's generated more yards per route than any player in the class, but we didn't get to see his pro day numbers because of his ankle injury. So there's a little bit of a drop-off on him that could be. They could also get Rashad Bateman out of Minnesota. There aren't many holes in his game, and the junior product looks great coming out of college. He lost 10 pounds right before the season, and he was one of the highest grade receivers in the country as a sophomore and led the nation in yards per route run from an outside alignment. So he's a true outside receiver. I guess if they wanted to wait a little more and they just wanted a slot receiver, which I don't get why they would want one, because you would figure you have AJ Green and DeAndre Hopkins on the outside. DeAndre Hopkins for sure the number one, AJ Green probably the two because the Fitz is a little older, and the Fitz is better historically, career-wise, everything about the Fitz. I mean, we all remember that Super Bowl where he took it to the house like 70 yards, should have won against the Pittsburgh Steelers, but Big Ben had other plans with San Antonio Holmes. Knocked a touchdown in the back corner of the end zone, wins the game. So they could put him in the slot, it looks like, because the Fitz's glory days are behind him. But you also have Christian Kirk. He could play a 2 and slot. He could be each. Kyler Murray has the range to throw it to each of them. He could throw it deep. He could throw it short. He has the arm power, as we know that Kyler Murray does because he's also a baseball player. But, yes, then they could try to get, I guess, Elijah Moore. That's my point. And you won't find another slot receiver tougher than Elijah Moore. He hauled in 73% of his contested catch opportunities and had a 1,193-yard campaign. Physically, he can make it into the NFL. That's what you love about him. So these are like the top 5. If you want Terrence Marshall, who was the Justin Jefferson guy out of LSU, he racked up 23 touchdowns on 94 catches over the past 2 seasons, and he's not even 21 years old yet. And few receivers in this draft class could, match him on his radius, on like where he could catch the ball. He has very good ball hawking skills. You usually say ball hawk when it comes to a cornerback because they're hawking the ball from them. But, I mean, it doesn't matter. The point is, when the ball's in the air, Terrence Marshall knows what to do. So these are a lot of good options for the Arizona Cardinals at that 16th pick. If they want to trade up with anyone, they could try, I guess, with the Giants. Try to convince the Giants. The Falcons look like they're always willing to trade back because they feel like they still have all their weapons. But yeah, no, I don't get why the Arizona Cardinals want another receiver. But just know that this receiver, fantasy-wise, because this is the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast, it would help out Kyler Murray a lot. It would stretch out the field. DeAndre Hopkins, it would help out more because you already know AJ Green, Christian Kirk, or Larry Fitzgerald. One of them is going to get hurt throughout the year. Most likely, even 2 is going to get hurt. When that happens, then they're going to have to bracket over DeAndre Hopkins and double team him with a safety and a corner. So that means he's going to get less opportunities to get the ball, a.k.a. less opportunities to get more fantasy points. So with another receiver in the slot, it could at least, if he's a capable and admirable receiver, that's why I'm pretty sure that they want a good receiver like a Jalen Waddle or a Devontae Smith, because that guy will be able to take the top off. And you can't double DeAndre Hopkins. You have to focus on this rookie receiver as well. Jalen Waddle had 2 catches for over 70 yards in his last year at Alabama. This guy shows that he has big play ability. Arizona Cardinals know that their defense is getting better. They have Budda Baker. They just drafted that guy out of, what's his name? Simmons. They drafted him last year in last year's draft. I think that the Arizona Cardinals feel like their defense is adequate, but that they know that they need more offensive weapons just for the simple fact that Kyler Murray's weapons are going to start disintegrating around him as we speak. So the Cardinals, they know what they're doing, but I'm just a little weary, a little weary on who they want. So I feel like they just got rid of Patrick Peterson. Maybe they should get J.C. Horn. Who knows? But let's move on to the next thing. Some more rumors going around the NFL. Apparently, Zach Wilson, the guy we've already opened up the show, we talked about, broke down his numbers. We talked about how he had the highest passer rating in all of college football last year. Only threw a couple interceptions, threw 38 touchdowns, over 4,000 yards. This guy was a stud. One of the most accurate quarterbacks in the draft, would have been number one by far if it wasn't for Trevor Lawrence being one of the highest graded, Pro Football Focused, ranked quarterbacks coming out of the draft since Andrew Luck, since John Elway. This is the type of praise they're giving to this guy, the type of talent he has, the type of leadership he has, and the winning moxie this guy has. Yes, moxie, I said it. The swagger, the confidence. This guy was a sophomore. He was a freshman when he was playing at Clemson. He was winning national championship. He was leading the nation with the best team in Clemson. He has what it takes. So Zach Wilson had to take the second seat. He understands that the Jets need a quarterback, especially now more than ever, especially after we broke down that Sam Darnold trade. Sam Darnold getting traded to the Carolina Panthers for some first rounders and second rounders. Sam Darnold is gonna be a better fit on the Panthers than Teddy Bridgewater, but Zach Wilson's gonna be a better fit on that Jets offense, and I feel like they're trying to at least help him out more. Adam Gase seemed like he was trying to make Zach Wilson a jobber. Not Zach Wilson, Sam Darnold. And if you don't know what a jobber is, and they use that term a lot in WWE and wrestling, they say a jobber, a guy who's just basically going to go out there, do his job, and get his butt kicked to make the other guy look good. Your job is to make the other guy look good. So Adam Gase was like, well, Sam Darnold's a jobber. We're just going to put him out there, give him a couple of plays. If he doesn't do good, then I hate him. I'm over him already. It doesn't matter if we're halfway through the year. He's setting up the job for the next guy, which is Zach Wilson. Zach Wilson doesn't want to be a jobber, and there's been reports that he's preparing not to just be the franchise quarterback, but the Jets' franchise quarterback. And his quarterback coach, John Beck, has told reporters that Zach Wilson has picked the brains of Chad Pennington, ex-Jets quarterback, Josh McCown, ex-longtime Jets quarterback, who would kind of rotate between the backup and the starting role, and the Mark Sanchez. So he talked to all of them. And he talked to the Jets franchise, the Jets club, and everything. So it's pretty set that Zach Wilson's going to be the number 2 pick. I don't know if asking all those guys was the right option, but I feel like it's good for, when you look at it, Chad Pennington had the most career success out of anyone on the New York Jets. Especially, well, no, I scratched that. Mark Sanchez had the most success out of any of the New York Jets franchise quarterbacks. Chad Pennington was just there the longest. He played 89 games with the Jets, had a record of 44 and 37, 66 completion percentage, over 17,000 yards passing, over 100 touchdowns thrown. Sorry, he had 8 years on the Jets, 3 years on the Dolphins. I completely forgot about his Dolphins stint. But yes, when he was on the Jets, he was giving you seasons of 8-4 back in 2002, 8-5 in 2004, 10-6 in 2006. So he gave the Jets some of the best years that he could give them. He led the league in passer rating in 2002, led them in touchdowns in 2002 and completion percentage, one of his better years. So Chad Pennington, you could say, has had one of the best success out of Jets quarterbacks during the regular season. So then Zach Wilson's probably talking to him. It's really strategic too, that on how, hey, like you were here for a longer term, 8 years, than Mark Sanchez, who only had a couple years. You're here longer than Josh McCown. Josh McCown may have been there for a while, but let's not forget that Josh McCown also was playing backup role a lot of the times. So that's just a different aspect. You want to know how the regular season guy has to go through his days every single day. He goes into the locker. You're the man. You're the quarterback of the New York Jets. Are you going to feel the pressure? What are you going to feel? If he really wants to know how the pressure feels like, he's going to probably talk to Mark Sanchez, who didn't have a long stint with the Jets, but went to 2 AFC championships back-to-back. Yes, could have went to the Super Bowl in 2010, 2011, but didn't. He had great years where he was 8-8 and 11-5. He played for the Jets for 4 years. Years where he threw for over 3,000 yards. I mean, his completion percentage was 56%. We know Mark Sanchez. he had the butt fumble against the New England Patriots, and ever since that, he lived in infamy his whole life, and it wasn't looking good. And then he got tossed around from the Eagles to the Cowboys to the Washington football team, all throughout the NFC East. He probably talked to Mark Sanchez, hey, how do you deal with it being at the top of the game? You were at the top of the Jets' career. They trusted you. They liked you as the Alex Smith of their team. They knew you weren't going to be anything spectacular or outstanding, but they knew that you could manage a game, run it with LT, be able to give it to Plaxico Burress. Yes, I'm naming a bunch of old Jets guys. All these people that we know and love, and then you went from all the way to the top to the bottom. How was that crash? And if I deal with that crash, what am I going to be faced with? What is the New York Jets media going to do to me? And then, of course, we have Josh McCown. Josh McCown, a longtime New York Jet. You want to just ask him, hey, if I get put into a backup role later down the line in my career, what am I going to deal with? Are people going to make fun of me because I used to start there? Because Josh McCown's been a journeyman. He started with the Cardinals in 2002. He played for 9 different teams and 2 years on the Jets. So he's asking him, hey, how was that Jet stint that you had? He went 5-8 one year, 0-3 in the other. So he was a backup behind Geno Smith and Sam Darnold. You ask him, hey, what? So you already know. You ask him, hey, how was it being a backup? You probably got the first-hand look and seeing how everything is, because when you're a quarterback and everyone's yelling at you, the fans are yelling at you, your players are yelling at you, and you're hyped up with adrenaline, it's hard to kind of slow down and, check out the process of everything. Josh McCown, he gets to slow down, check out the process of everything, check out how the organization is ran, and is probably a really intelligent guy, so he's able to give him some quick, word, give him some quick notes and things that he should look forward to. Zach Wilson's going to be your number 2 pick. That is quite apparent. Let's go into Kyle Pitts. Apparently the Cowboys aren't expected to move up in the draft to get tight end Kyle Pitts. Reports are coming out that they have heavy interest in Mr. Pitts. Kyle Pitts, who has one of the longest wingspans in NFL history, just beating DK Metcalf in the longest wingspan. So that just tells you what kind of beast he is. Kyle Pitts is perfect because he's a tight end, but he's not a traditional tight end. He's more like a big wide receiver. He's 6'6", 240 pounds. Last year had 43 catches, 12 touchdowns, so he's a red zone machine. That's what the Cowboys are having trouble in. They were bottom 15 or bottom 10 in red zone efficiency. The Cowboys need a finish. Zeke wasn't looking as good as he did the year before, but that's because of the linemen. I feel like they need Penei Sewell or Rashawn Slater better. The Cowboys are looking in all the wrong places. Even a safety, the safety out of LSU, would be a fine fit. But no, they want more weapons because they want to literally tell Dak, it looks like, we are giving you absolutely everything that you wanted. We're giving you the money. We're giving you the players. Oh, wait, did you say you don't have a tight end? Yeah, you have a tight end. Do you not have a running back? Oh, you have one of the best running backs in Cowboy history. Do you have receivers? Oh, I'm sorry, you have CeeDee Lamb, our first pick last year, who was stud. Amari Cooper, who we traded a first-round pick for, who's a stud and had over 1,000 yards. And then Michael Gallup, who could take the top off of defenses at any time, so you have to always be vigilant on him. Kyle Pitts will just add to that nonsense of an offense, and there's absolutely no excuse. Like I said, no excuse for Dak Prescott to say, I didn't get money. You got money. Well, I didn't get – no, you got this. So Kyle Pitts goes to the not Florida. If the Florida product goes to the Dallas Cowboys, they have him. They have Dalton Schultz. They still have playoff Blake Jarwin that got hurt all last year, so he wasn't able to play, so it was mainly Schultz. This offense will just be on 10. It'll be a top 5 offense if they add Kyle Pitts. They'll be barely behind or barely right next to the Bills, the Kansas City Chiefs offense, and then it would be this offense. I would like this offense way better than the Packers offense if they added Kyle Pitts. Kyle Pitts, like I said, 6'6", 240. You can't teach that. And apparently Jerry doesn't learn because we're trying to teach him, hey, you need linemen, you need defensive players. And he's like, no, I could still roll with the old linemen I drafted in 2010. We'll see how far that takes you. The Dallas Cowboys, looking a little shaky, but we never trust the Dallas Cowboys unless it's fantasy purposes, because Dak Prescott and Mike McCarthy are the perfect combination of we're going to throw 40 times a game, and we're going to throw it to all these great weapons, and then we're going to get these guys open, and if it's a PPR league, points per reception, bingo, bango, extra fantasy points, top 5 fantasy offense if they had Kyle Pitts. But it looks like they're not going to move up. Doesn't look like Kyle Pitts will drop, so this is all just speculation and rumors. When we come back, we're going to talk about some more NFL news, some things I took away from that Daniel Jeremiah call, and we're going to break down the biggest bust in NFL draft history when we come back.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines, they got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
And we are back at the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Thank you for listening. And remember, if you like what I'm saying or don't like what I'm saying, bug me, talk trash to me, talk mess to me, yell at me if you have to. All on all of our social media pages at GSMC Fantasy Football. We're available on Twitter. Twitter's probably the easiest to email me and let me know. We are available also on Facebook and on YouTube. So make sure you check us out. Yes, this is all lovely, lovely, lovely day. Lovely, lovely week. As I said before, the NFL draft is upon us. Looks like to be one of the best quarterback draft classes in a long time. We are going to break down some quarterbacks right now and talk about where they might land. They might end up. We're getting closer now. There's all the speculation. Oh, we know Trevor Lawrence and Zach Wilson going 1-2. That's just it. That's set in stone. So build your fantasy offenses accordingly to those two. After that, kind of a free-for-all. We don't know where Justin Fields is going to land. We don't know where Matt Jones is going to go because he got some high stock after that Alabama season. We don't know where Trey Lance is going to go. We don't even know if Kyle Trask is going to go in the first round. Who knows? We don't. But there's a lot of rumors, speculation, and we're going to talk about it and their fantasy implications. Remember, at the end of the show, we're going to talk about the biggest bust in NFL history. Some are Ryan Leaf, Jamarcus Russell. Just because you're drafted with the first pick, just like Trevor Lawrence and all these other guys, doesn't mean you have a for sure shot to be the best football player of all time. You still got to work. You got to work hard. There's some funny stories about these draft busts that I want to talk about, and I'm really excited to go over pretty much as many as we could go over. And I just like it too because some of them are Raiders, and I just love how the Raiders just do not know how to draft people. So, if you stick around at the end, we'll talk about the draft bust. But right now, we're going to talk about some more rumors around the NFL. We're going to stick with the number 4th pick. Some betting odds just dropped. Kyle Pitts is supposed to be minus 125, which means he's the most favored out of everyone to go the 4th pick. If it's not Kyle Pitts, it's looking like it's going to be Justin Fields at plus 185, which means you'll get more money than putting down. I know this isn't a gambling or a show like that, but sports and gambling are starting to become intertwined, so you got to get used to it and understand what those odds mean. Who has the 3rd best odds? Then Trey Lance, then Mac Jones. So what it looks like is the Falcons don't feel like they need linemen. They already got Jake Matthews. They got all the linemen that they need. They don't feel like they need a defense just because they feel like they could probably get them in the later rounds. They could get a safety, a corner, a linebacker. They should get Micah Parsons to me because they need someone to rally that defense together and get it all going. But the whole point, I think, is to show if Matt Ryan still has it. And the only way you're going to show that Matt Ryan still has it is if you give him adequate and proper weapons. Right now, they are not doing that. They given him Calvin Ridley, which I'll give them, a top 5 fantasy receiver last year. And he was great. Only gave you one single-digit performance. Everything else was pretty much 10 to 20 to 30 fantasy points. Calvin Ridley's crazy. I like him going into fantasy next year. But it's even better, too, because if a Kyle Pitts were to go or another wide receiver weapon, that would help their stock. It would also, like I said, not let people be able to bracket. Julio Jones is on the other end as well. But it looks like they are looking at Kyle Pitts. He's 6'6", huge. That's 12 touchdowns. They're another team that has problems scoring in the red zone. They were a good 20-20 team. They could take you all the way to the 20-yard line to the red zone. But when it came to finishing, they were bottom in the NFL. Not bottom, but they were bottom 5 in the NFL. Terrible, terrible, terrible. This is the perfect Band-Aid for a red zone offense. And it's kind of apparent that it might happen too because apparently some more rumors are happening that the Falcons are receiving trade offers for Julio Jones, per Ian Rappaport. And it wouldn't be a surprise, apparently, if the Atlanta Falcons were to trade Julio Jones, which I think might as well. Julio Jones is one of the best receivers of all time. I'll give you that. But his best years are definitely behind him. I feel bad because I really think that he had a chance to win a Super Bowl that year when they went, and they obviously almost won against the Patriots, but the Patriots came back 28-3. Oh my goodness. I just thinking about that, boggles my mind. It's absolutely insane. But Calvin Johnson, exactly. Same person. Julio Jones, dominant. Had over 12,000 career receiving yards, over 848 catches, 60 touchdowns. This guy is an absolute stud. He's had 1,000 receiving yards from 2014 all the way to 2019. So for 6 years, he had over 1,300 receiving yards, including the year where he won me my fantasy championship and had 1,800 total yards, 136 catches, and 8 touchdowns. Julio Jones, though, is never a touchdown guy, though. He only had double-digit touchdowns in a season once, and that was back in 2012 in his heyday, second year in the league. After that, he had 2 touchdowns, 6 touchdowns, 3 touchdowns, 3 touchdowns, 6 touchdowns. Julio Jones isn't a wide receiver, a touchdown-dependent wide receiver. He's a 2-time first All-Pro first team, 7-time Pro Bowler, 2-time yards leader out of receivers. Julio Jones, there's no question in our mind that Julio Jones is a stud. But last year showed you that he only played 9 games. He only had 771 receiving yards. That's very, very concerning. So if Julio Jones cannot stay healthy, and it's hard. It's really, really hard being a 6'3", 220 guy who runs as fast as anyone, as Tyreek Hill in the NFL. You're that fast, you're that strong, you're that tall. Your bones are going to start breaking down on you at some point, especially with all these corners definitely tackling you by the legs because they don't want any of that 6'3", 220 pound, almost as big as Derrick Henry frame. So they're just going to take him out. He's 32 years old. If they have to trade him, they have to trade him. I'm not drafting Julio in fantasy this year. I'm actually going to stay away from him. But Julio Jones might get traded. If he gets traded, Kyle Pitts, Calvin Ridley, fantasy draft goes up. And depending on where Julio Jones, his draft could go up as well. Let's switch it to the other side. Let's switch it to quarterbacks. We're going to talk a lot about the New England. Actually, before we talk about the New England Patriots, let's go into the Niners. The Niners have finally broken down who their 2 options are going to be. They only have 2. It's either going to be for that 3rd pick, Mac Jones, quarterback out of Alabama, or it's going to be Trey Lance, quarterback out of, what are they, the North Dakota Bison. That's what they're called. So 2 different perspectives you get from these 2 things. Trey Lance didn't play last year, kind of concerning, has to come back onto the field, get reacclimated. You're not going to just come in and be as hot as you can. But it depends on Kyle Shanahan's system. He likes that Trey Lance is also a scrambler. He's very athletic. He's not just a one-trick pony type of guy. He threw in his best year, which I think Mike Shanahan wants. He wants a glorified Alex Smith. That's why he got Jimmy G. He had 66% completion percentage, really, really good. Not great, but good. 2,700 yards passing, pretty good. 9.7 yards per throw. That's what he's looking for. He doesn't care if this guy could throw deep. He wants to make sure he could throw accurate passes to George Kittle, Brendan Ayuk, and Deebo Samuel with in routes that are 5 yards and in, 10 yards and in, 10-yard comebacks, little drag routes that are 2 yards over the middle, maybe little curl routes, little flare routes that running backs do, because you know that Kyle Shanahan likes to get his quarterbacks and running backs into the game as fast as he can. He also had 28 touchdowns and zero picks, which shows you his decisive skills. Fantastic. We love it. 180 quarterback rating. I didn't even know it could go that high. But yeah, he could do it all. He's also a good rusher, particularly when he played in the his college championship, not the BCS, but the FCS. He rushed 15 times, 143 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And he's a bigger body. He's not as small as Justin Fields. Justin Fields is 6'3", 228. This guy is 6'4", 226. So he's heavier, he's taller, he's able to get real agile in the pocket. This is something that Kyle Shanahan probably really, really likes, especially when he sees the tape. But when you see the talent that's around Mac Jones isn't going to wow you with his running abilities. In the championship and the college football semifinal, he only rushed for a total of 9 rushes for 23 yards, averaging 2.6 yards per carry. That's not what you're getting from Trey Lance, but he did have 41 touchdowns and 4 interceptions in an SEC conference that is known as the best conference in all of college football, especially last year since all the SEC played. Mac Jones had a full season last year, threw 77%. Shoosh. One of the best in the nation. 4,500 yards. Whoosh. One of the best in the nation. 41 touchdowns. Only 4 interceptions. When I said I didn't see 180 quarterback rating, throw that one in the water. He threw for 203 quarterback rating. This guy's an absolute stud. In big games, he shows up. Florida SEC championship when he played Florida, number 7 against Kyle Trask. They won 52-46, 33 for 43, 418 yards, 76% completion percentage, 5 touchdowns, 1 pick. Amazing. QBR of 92. Out of this world. Anything out over a 90 is great, great, great when it comes to college QBRs. Then it goes to national championship semifinal. They play Notre Dame. They would say is a better defense. Wrong. 297 yards passing, 4 touchdowns, no picks, only got sacked 1 time. Once again, shows up in big games. Then he stomped out Ohio State. 36 for 45, 464 yards, 80% completion percentage, 5 touchdowns, and a 98 quarterback rating. Almost pretty perfect. Showed Ohio State that he was big dog. He was first in the nation in passing yards, second in touchdowns, and tied 36 for interceptions. But still, there's a lot of quarterbacks in college football. So if you're tied in the top 20, 30 of anything, you're pretty good. So Mac Jones is showing you that he has the pedigree. He has the stats. He has the big-time games. But he doesn't have the mobile ability. And you also got to take into factor that he has Devontae Smith. He also has Jalen Waddle. He had Najee Harris. Last year, he had, when he stepped in for Jalen Hurts and showed you his sample size, where he threw 14 touchdowns, 3 picks, 68% completion percentage, 1,500 yards. This guy had Jerry Jeudy. He had Henry Ruggs. Yeah, all these studs. It's shown. Alabama receivers have shown to have the most yard separation out of anyone else in the country. So he's pretty much as long as he throws it to them on the money, they're going to catch the ball and they're going to take it to the house. So a lot of that could play into a factor where Trey Lance played for North Dakota State Bison. And, you would think that his rushing ability would fit a little bit better with their style of play. He's also bigger, taller, and faster than Mac Jones. So you get both sides of the tail. Who knows what they're going to go with? They're 2 quarterbacks on opposite ends of the spectrum. So we'll see what they go with. The Patriots, listening to this, could now potentially trade up into the top 10 of the draft with the intentions of drafting Justin Fields. Okay, Ryan mixing up Zach Wilson and Justin Fields to make the ultimate quarterback. Justin Wilson, the BYU Ohio State Buckeye who could rush, throw, and do everything on the field. No, I'm playing. Justin Fields. That is who the Patriots are looking forward to. Also, if it looks like in fantasy perspective with Trey Lance, I would like Trey Lance a little better just because he's going to run. Those are more rushing yards. That's more fantasy points, dual threat quarterbacks. But just know he is more likely to get hurt the next season or the season after. So in dynasties, I wouldn't like it too much because he's going to try to rely on his legs when he gets scared. But these are grown boys in the NFL. So we don't know if they have Mac Jones. Love it. They have to coach him right, which Kyle Shanahan, great coach. I believe that they could. Great front office. They have John Lynch. The whole organization of the Niners, top to bottom, is great. So I feel like they could build Mac Jones up, and I like him better as a dynasty quarterback going into the long run. And next year they should start him as well. If Jimmy G goes down, when he goes down, more like it. But Justin Fields, let's talk about him. Didn't get to play a full season. He's the one that started a petition to advocate, hey, we got to play, man. Like SEC's playing, let's start playing too. So he played a couple games last year. Was 36 with 2,100 yards passing, 22 yards, 22 touchdowns, throwing, only 6 interceptions. Pretty promising. We like his rushing abilities. When he rushes against Clemson, he had 42 rushing yards, averaging 5.3 yards per carry, 67 rushing yards against Alabama. They did get smacked, and he didn't show out that well. That's why it's a little concerning. But I feel like Bill Belichick is not understanding. He's always understood the NFL. But coming from an old school way of thinking where he used to coach the New York Jets where you could win a Super Bowl at the time with Jeff Hostetler. Yes, Jeff Hostetler. Look him up if you don't know. He was the backup for Phil Simms, comes in, wins a Super Bowl. Not the most agile guy. Definitely a pocket type of guy. I back up, do my 3-step drop, throw the ball. Hopefully we get it to whoever we get it to. The Giants that was an old team. I don't remember much besides Otis Anderson, the running back, Lawrence Taylor, and Carl Banks on the defensive end. But for fantasy purposes, we'll talk about Bill Belichick. Bill Belichick is seen like, hey, I need a more mobile quarterback to kind of work this offense. That's why he got Cam Newton. But he's seen that Cam Newton can't throw the ball like he used to. So he's like, darn it, I need to kind of, find a middle ground. I need to figure out what I could get. Justin Fields is shown that he could be a good thrower, and he can be a good rusher. So he likes the dual threat, and I think he feels like he's a raw prospect that he could work with. And Justin Fields, was supposed to be one of the top quarterbacks in the draft, but there's been rumors saying that his work ethic is not that great. I don't understand how you're a top prospect in the draft and your work ethic's terrible. That doesn't even make sense to me. I feel like it's just slander to have him drop off in the draft. But if you want a bigger guy, and apparently the Patriots have also been reportedly doing a lot of homework on this quarterback in particular, Kyle Pitt's boy, Kyle Trask. It was the Kyle to Kyle connection in Florida. Kyle Trask shows that he could do both. And you're like, oh, is he big? Yeah, he's 6'5", 240, which is a Tom Brady type of build. Second, you know how Mac Jones was number 1 in passing yards? Kyle Trask was second with 4,200 passing yards. You know how, Mac Jones was number 1 in passing touchdown, or number 2 in passing touchdowns with 41. While Kyle Trask was number 1 with 43 touchdowns, only 8 interceptions, not too bad. 68% completion percentage, really good. Like I said, 9.8 yards per throw, so he doesn't throw it too deep all the time. When he did play against Alabama in the championship, he showed out. He tried his hardest. He had 408 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. This guy did what he had to do. Kyle Trask is a mobile quarterback. He's not your conventional mobile. He's like a Jeff Driscoll. If you remember Jeff Driscoll, he was also a Florida quarterback. He's not going to, a Sam Darnold as well, he's not going to run every play. But if he sees an opening, he's athletic enough to take it up the hole and at least take it that way. Kyle Trask is someone more agile, still someone you could see outside the pocket, someone that would make the Patriots offense, I think, look better than a Justin Fields would, just because Justin Fields is too raw for me, and I don't know how patient Bill Belichick is with him. I think he would have him as a backup for Cam Newton and try to have him be that Jimmy G role behind him, which does make sense. But once again, Kyle Trask, I like him. He's a better build. He's bigger. But the Patriots are also being connected to prospect J.C. Horn, if he falls to the 15th pick, unlikely he's going to. That's cornerback stuff, so we won't get too much into it. But the Patriots looking to make some moves. And some just quick NFL news that has nothing to do with the draft, just for you to know. Sean Lee, longtime Cowboy linebacker, has retired. Yes, this guy gets a concussion every year, so it's good that he's retiring. That Cowboys defense needs another linebacker. They need Micah Parsons, more like it. And the Chiefs are trading their first-round pick and more to the Ravens for star tackle Orlando Brown. So the Chiefs just got Orlando Brown Jr. from the Ravens, who's an all-pro tackle. They also got Joe Thuney, guard from the Patriots, showing himself. He didn't play last year just because of COVID restrictions. And also they got Kyle Long out of retirement. It seems as if the New England Patriots are making a lot of moves in this draft. Making a lot of moves. And we've seen that that the Cowboys and the Chiefs have made their little moves. When we come back, we are going to talk about the 7 things I took away from Daniel Jeremiah's Zoom call. It's a lot of important draft news. That's why I'm going to go over it. And we're going to talk about the biggest draft bust in NFL history. The draft bust. When we come back.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Welcome back to the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. I am your host, Ryan Basulto. Thank you for listening this long. We appreciate you. We are trying to make you champions. Today's episode is just all about the draft. After the draft, we're going to break down all the offenses and where they rank after their draft, because I did the pre-rankings on top fantasy offenses. Then I'm going to do the rankings after on who I believe are the better teams. Like I said, if the Cowboys were to add a Kyle Pitts, I have to put them in the top 5 of fantasy offenses just because they have the best wide receiving core, along with their quarterback who loves to throw the ball, and their coach who says throw it as many times as you want to, because I'm used to Aaron Rodgers throwing it 60 times a game, and don't even ask me to run it in the red zone like I didn't do with Eddie Lacy and all the other people. I'm talking about Mark McCarthy on the Packers. We'll just throw it. We'll throw it or we'll run it with Dak. So these fantasy offenses are some of the best. We still have to go over the biggest busts in NFL history, which is going to make me laugh because, well, it's not funny. It's not funny because these guys tried. They had their shot. But I feel like some of them didn't try, though. I feel like a lot of them felt like, oh, I was a number 2 pick. I'm going to be good because of my college career. I don't have to work harder. Wrong. Only 1% of college football players make it into, less than 1%, make it onto an NFL roster. That means most of the people you're playing week to week stink. They're not even NFL ready. So all the people in the NFL are the cream of the crop. So every guy you were like, oh man, thank goodness we don't have to play him again next week in college football. Wrong. You're going to have to play that guy pretty much every week. There's always going to be a huge time defender, which is always bringing me back to Tom Brady. And how is this guy 40-something years old and still winning Super Bowls? It literally doesn't make sense to me. How does he not get hurt or nothing? This guy's the greatest of all time. I'm tired of him. I'm tired of it. Oh, my goodness. But yes, we talked about a lot of draft news. There was a lot of draft news, by the way. The Cardinals are thinking about moving up in the draft. The Patriots are looking at Kyle Trask and Justin Fields. I feel like for fantasy purposes, Kyle Trask a little better. But they're not the only ones that are kind of debating between quarterbacks. There's also Mac Jones and Trey Lance from the Niners. Mac Jones would be a better dynasty fit than Trey Lance because Trey Lance may end up like an RG3 where he's going to try to use his legs too much. Another, spoiler, a bust that I'm going to say later. Yes. And then what about the Falcons? Have they made up their mind? Are they going to get an offensive weapon? Are they going to get a quarterback? The odds in Vegas are saying that they're going to get Kyle Pitts. And it makes a lot of sense because at that point you say, Matt Ryan, you're one of the best quarterbacks of all time. You have the most completions in the NFL for like the past 5-6 years. So if that's the case, let's give you another weapon. And there's no excuses anymore, Matt. We have a good line. They need a good running back. That's what they really need. But I think they could get Travis Etienne or Javonte Williams in the second round because they only have Mike Davis now. Todd Gurley still hasn't re-signed. I can't stand Todd Gurley. Ever since this guy messed up his knee and then he wanted to be Odell Beckham. Oh, force me into the Rams offense. Cost them a Super Bowl. Yeah, Todd Gurley's off my list. He's washed goods to me. So I'd rather get Javonte Williams, Travis Etienne, Najee Harris, all these guys ahead of Todd Gurley. And Zach Wilson had to have a heart-to-heart with all the Jets quarterbacks. Oh, my goodness. Why do they hate you? Why are the Jets so mean to us? Yeah, it's tough being a Jets quarterback because the franchise stinks. You're not really you're giving the keys to like Mitsubishi Mirage 1998 and it's still blowing smoke out the back, but everyone's acting as if it's a Lambo, which I don't get because it just goes to the notion and the saying where everyone says, "Oh, it's better when the New York Jets are winning in football." Or like LeBron said the other day about basketball. "Oh, it's better when the Knicks are winning at basketball." What do you mean it's better when they're winning? They stink. They just stink. So why not have the real teams, the good teams, the Patriots, the Chiefs, the Ravens, these teams? It's better when these teams are winning. They're the real teams, the teams you want to see every day, not the Zach Wilsons. Zach Wilson's a great quarterback. Let's see if he changes that franchise. He definitely got the talking pointers from every different type of quarterback that the Jets had. But we're going to talk about now. NFL Network draft analyst Daniel Jeremiah. He was answering questions for an hour and a half on Wednesday, previewing the 2021 NFL Draft. That's going to happen, like I said, from the 29th to the 1st. And as you might expect, gave a little insight. So let's talk about this insight and the 7 things that I think are the biggest takeaways just from this. There's no particular order. I'm just going to say some things that I took away. So one of the first things is few are going to argue that Mac Jones is the number 3 quarterback talent in the 21 NFL draft, but that's where many expect the Niners to get him. Like I told you, the Niners see him as a better quarterback. It's just a question of fit versus ability. And the former Alabama quarterback, he could be the best fit for the Kyle Shanahan, but he's looking for a quarterback with a little bit of arrogance. Like Kyle Shanahan was saying, you always hear it's about the Jimmies and the Joes, not the X's and the O's. That would be an X's and O's decision. It is, I believe, so much in the X's and O's. I need somebody that can just see the game through my eyes and make those decisions. That's what Kyle Shanahan was saying and kind of hinting about Mac Jones. But you can't argue when you watch the tape. And Kyle Shanahan, by the way it looks like, he gets more open about talking about Mac Jones than anybody or any other draft prospect in the league. And he said there's a reason why so many teams are picking off all the guys from, his tree that run the offense because it's the best offense there is. There's no doubt that the 49ers have someone specific in mind. And it's definitely a quarterback. You don't move up 9 spots just in general from number 12 to number 3 and give up a couple of first rounders if you weren't going to get your guy. If Mac Jones is indeed Shanahan's guy, which it looks like, it looks as if Mac Jones might get his opportunity in San Francisco a little earlier because they did have to give up 2 first-round picks. Mac Jones, he's not as mobile, but he's going to stay in the pocket. He's going to make the big throws. You have all the weapons for him. So that whole argument also, like I was saying, that Alabama's receivers create the most separation, the yard separation, out of anyone else in college football. That's not too far off from the Niners. They have Deebo Samuel, a first-round pick who's awesome. Brandon Ayuk, a first-round pick who is awesome last year, had a great year, just dealt with injuries in his rookie year, so they had to, acclimate him. But he had a streak where he had over 20 fantasy points 3 games in a row. And George Kittle, we know is supposed to be one of the top tight ends if he stays healthy on the field. Also, he doesn't have to stay the most healthy, which is good about George Kittle, just for the simple fact that he's such a tough guy, probably the toughest in the league. He could run block, he could pancake people, and he usually plays with a broken arm or a broken leg all the time. So George Kittle, you don't have to, as long as his leg's not completely broken or his foot or hands didn't fall off, he should be fine to be a go for next year. Another thing I took away, thanks to the COVID-19 pandemic, which led NFL Scouting Combine to alter its usual procedures, there's medical information that is left on the table. And just 150 players went to Indianapolis, which was the NFL Pro Day this year, for medical checks. Less than half of the usual combine. So less than half of the people who go to get checked for their injuries, say like a Tua. Tua was getting scouted all last year because of his hip injury. They were like, oh, how's his hip going to do? How are you going to be able to throw off your foot without using your hips? The quarterback is a very hip-oriented position. The way you throw the ball is within the motion of your hips, within the motion of your leg stepping up in the pocket, a motion of your arm throwing that perfect throw with, however quarterbacks throw. I don't know exactly how to throw a precision type pass. I'm not a baseball player. I was a football player, but I was on the defensive end. And only 150 players, like I said, were checked in Indianapolis. There's uncertainty that that some of these players are going to say they weren't as hurt, and they're going to come out and be hurt. But it's nothing more that scares a general manager more, which is what I was looking through the whole thing, through the telephone conference, was not knowing all the medical info on like the person you're going to draft. And of course, every team is looking to dump a late pick and has to find a team looking to pick up one. But that won't be an easy search. A robust trade market toward the end of the draft will require some variance in the way clubs view this problem. It looks like people are going to probably try to, trade back in the draft to, if they have any uncertainty in someone who maybe has an injury, a toe injury, a foot injury, ankle injury. You never know. These medical clearances didn't have to happen this year because COVID-19 was preventing everyone from saying, hey, let's come. Do you want to come and get checked in? No, I'm scared of COVID, so I'm not going to get checked in. It was a plus for the players. But when it comes to general managers, so my whole point from this, point I took away from the Zoom meeting is that if you see a player that's hurt and it's an injury that's a little concerning, like a ACL injury, a knee injury, a hip injury, a elbow injury, things that look like they could have long-term effects to it, be a little wary on drafting them in fantasy next year just because these teams don't have all the medical clearance, so they're not going to have the exact certainty as past years where you're like, okay, this guy's going to get hurt, but we know it's going to take this timetable. Some of the guys you just don't know. So we'll see how it looks from there. Also, if you're looking to trade up for a candidate in round one, look no further than the Tennessee Titans. Their needs are cornerback, offensive line, and wide receiver, but the availability of the ones in the draft are going to be gone within the first 10, 15 picks. They're pick number 22. They're positioned to miss out on a lot of these guys. So they're not going to be able to get a great quarterback. They could get a good running back, but you have Derrick Henry, so why would you do that? You need defensive players, like I said, cornerback, and a receiver. They definitely need a receiver, so maybe they'll try to get a Rondale Moore, a Rashad Bateman. Elijah Moore probably better, so they can get a solid slot guy to go outside of A.J. Brown and Josh Reynolds, who they already have. But if they get a receiver, I like that fantasy offense a little more, especially if it's a good receiver. But it looks like they're probably going to have to move back. They don't need to draft anyone because they already have a solid team. They're a playoff-bound team. We saw it last year. They're going to be playoff-bound again. They're probably going to have another 8-8 year as they do every single year. The Tennessee Titans are a team that's probably going to look to move back And who knows? Maybe they'll just get a couple draft picks as opposed to, or maybe get a draft pick into next year's draft. So as a Tennessee Titans fan, just be prepared if your team may move back in the draft, or even Minnesota. Minnesota also is a team that might move back in the draft because they don't really need much on the offensive end, which is what the highlight of this draft is. It's mainly offensive guys, and if you need defensive guys, wait till the later round or in the second round, third round, you could get still almost the same value on defense, besides Patrick Surtain and J.C. Horn, pretty much, and Michael Parsons. Those are the only guys that are going to go in the beginning. Another thing is, how much belief do the Denver Broncos have in Drew Lock at quarterback? If one of the draft's top 5 quarterbacks slides to their selection at number 9, there's no way they're going to get it. There's no way they're not going to get a quarterback. That's just what I saw. It looks like they want to trade with the Falcons. It just depends how much the Falcons. I wouldn't move back if I were the Falcons. I just really wouldn't. But it looks like the Broncos want Trey Lance or they want Justin Fields. You can't pass them up. And if they're at number 9 personally, and it comes down to, even Mac Jones. But if it came down to Mac Jones or Drew Lock, Mac Jones is still a better option. If the Denver doesn't go with the quarterback, it's going to go with an offensive lineman at 9 to help protect Drew Lock. But their lineman is already top 10 in the NFL and getting better because they're so young as we speak. I really enjoy this Denver offense if it wasn't for the quarterback play. They just need a quarterback. They're one quarterback away from being a top 15 fantasy offense. And it's a shame because they have Tim Patrick, Jerry Jeudy, KJ Hamler, Melvin Gordon, Noah Fant. A lot of good, solid pieces that could be elite if they had the right passer. But it seems as if the Broncos are probably going to have to move up if they want to get one of these awesome guys. It's tough. Drew Lock had a terrible year last year. He only threw for over 2,000 yards. He led the Broncos to one of their worst seasons in a while. The Broncos have just been declining ever since the leave of Peyton Manning. But Drew Lock is not helping it. He had 18 interceptions last year. He led the league in interceptions, 59% completion percentage. The guy's not a stud. 15 interceptions, 16 touchdowns. The guy's not a stud, only 181 fantasy points. He was 4-9 in his 13 games that he started, 2,900 yards. He showed in 2 years that he could go 4-1 and then 4-9. So do you give him another chance? I don't give him a chance in fantasy, but the Broncos, I feel like, will give him a chance and get a lineman. But just remember, this is one of the best quarterback drafts almost in recent history. So you don't want to let everyone slide because next year's draft's not going to be as plentiful. And they could see themselves not getting a quarterback next year. And it's going to be a Paxton Lynch, Brock Osweiler, Trevor Siemian, whoever the heck these guys draft. And looking at this too, it looked as if the New York Giants GM David Gettleman is considering trading back from the number 11 pick. You don't believe it till you see it. But it looks like they're going to trade back because they're not going to be able to get a Devontae Smith, a top tight end Kyle Pitts, top lineman and Penei Sewell. And I feel like they should stay put at number 11 because they could still get Jalen Waddle that could help out Daniel Jones, or they could get another lineman. But I just don't like it for the simple fact that they need someone. Saquon Barkley's still not that guy. They should definitely get a running back in the second round. Daniel Jones gave you a terrible year last year. 2,900 yards, 11 touchdowns, 16 turnovers compared to his 11 touchdowns. The most fantasy points he gave you in a week was 21 against the Eagles. That's when he ran that legendary run all the way, like 90 yards, and then tripped on his own feet. Poor guy. Can't catch a break. But he gives you a lot of performances of 7 fantasy points. 7, 9, 8, 9, 3. Come on. I named too many single-digit fantasy performances. 3 fantasy points from your starting quarterback. Imagine how fat you lost that week in fantasy football. 3 fantasy points. 3. Ryan Fitzpatrick has that on one drive. Like, come on now. They need. I guess they need to give him weapons. They more likely need to get a lineman. So they should try to move up to get like Rashawn Slater or Penei Sewell, but they're not going to because they feel like they need a receiver, even though they signed Kenny Galladay to the 4-year, $72 million deal. They have Darius Slayton, who's a formidable receiver, who had 50 catches, 751 yards, and 3 touchdowns last year. a lot in part due to Daniel Jones' inability of giving him the ball. Sterling Shepard, 66 catches, 656 yards, and 3 touchdowns. He was hurt last year too. They also have Evan Ingram. They have a tight end that they were believing in. He did have a decent year, 63 catches for 654 yards, 1 touchdown, and a total of 130 fantasy points. The Giants need to figure it out. David Gettleman seems like he's kind of faking people, saying, oh, I'm going to trade back. But we all know that they do want that Jalen Waddle. They do want that Elijah Moore. They want that Rashad Bateman. They want a top 5 wide receiver, top 5 weapon. They could be able to get Najee Harris or Travis Etienne in the second round. They should try to get one of those guys, though. Because Saquon, been hurt the last 2 years. How many times are you going to ride that train? But that was just some of the takeaways I took from Daniel Jeremiah's conference as it pertains to fantasy, so you can get a little more insight, especially from an actual NFL analyst and not a actual Ryan Basulto, which is me. Make sure to follow us at GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast on Twitter, on Facebook. Like, share, subscribe on YouTube. We got it all. We're going to keep talking. This is the wrap of the NFL Draft. We are not going to be able to talk about the NFL Draft until next week when the draft is actually set in stone, and we'll go over all the picks, where they went, and their fantasy implications. But stick around at the end of the show as I go over the biggest draft bust in NFL history, just for fun, when we come back.
Are you looking to get your college football fix? Looking to get the latest news on your favorite school's team? The GSMC College Football Podcast is your ticket to all things college football. Join us as we talk college football, from the national championship, the college rivalries, the bowl game, to the Heisman Trophy. To which conference is the best? We've got you covered for the Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, the Pac-12, ACC, and everything in between. Download the GSMC College Football Podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
As if we are at the end of the show. I'm so happy you guys are listening to the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Thank you for sticking around to the last segment. We are going to go over the biggest NFL bust in draft history. Yes, the history of the draft busts. It started a long time ago when the drafts were just starting, and it seems as if some players were a little too cocky and arrogant and thinking that they could talk in like a British accent like I am right now, and it's very awful. Very, very awful. Their work ethic was worse than my British accent right now. Welcome back to the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. I was kind of trying to, just open it up and talk about how the draft has many great players. We have the Andrew Lucks. We have the it stinks because I'm only thinking about busts like Mario Williams. We have the John Elways. We have the Dan Marinos. We have all these people who were drafted in the first round. We have the Peyton Mannings who drafted first pick overall. And then we have the people like Tom Brady, drafted all the way in the 7th round, one of the last picks. And then they showed out because they showed that work ethic kicks talent's butt any day of the week. So you always want to make sure, if you have a player, this is just to remind you that if you have confidence in someone, just because they showed a lot of promise and hustle during the collegiate season doesn't mean they're for sure that they're going to be great. Let's start off with, it pains me. It pains me to mention another Ryan and also bring him down too, but Ryan Leaf. Ryan Leaf, he was drafted by San Diego out of Washington State, round 1, pick 2 in the 1998 draft. He's gone down in infamy, though, as the worst draft pick in NFL history coming into the draft. Many felt. If I was alive, I was 3 years old. But if I was actually, consciously thinking for myself, I wouldn't have thought he was better than Peyton Manning. Peyton Manning was one of the top Heisman prospects in the nation at the time. And we thought that he could be better than Peyton Manning. Peyton Manning was obviously the first pick. Second pick goes to Ryan Leaf. For his NFL career, Ryan Leaf only threw for 13 touchdowns and 33 interceptions. 33 interceptions in 4 years. He was already out of the league. They booted him out. That would be the same exact thing as if Mac Jones comes, or even Zach Wilson. This is perfect. Zach Wilson on the Jets. Oh, Zach Wilson, like I said, he has potential to be better than Trevor Lawrence. But he comes to the NFL, plays on the Jets, a.k.a. a San Diego Chargers team, yada, yada, yada. Then he just throws 13 touchdowns, 33 picks, out of the league by 2024. That's the equivalent to this Ryan Leaf thing. So always watch out. Just because they're a top quarterback does not mean anything. It really doesn't. Let's talk about someone else. Let's talk about the Detroit Lions drafting Charles Rogers. Do you know who Charles Rogers is? Because I don't. Never heard of this guy my whole life until I was doing this research. He's the first of 3 straight Lions receivers to be selected in the first round of the draft. He was selected in 2003, round 1, pick 2. But he busted the worst out of all of them. He was once a promising receiver out of Michigan State, but he only played 14 career games because of injuries, drug problems, and arrest got him booted from the league. Like I said, guys like this, he's the second pick overall. You figure out, okay, I'm the second pick. I'm kind of hot stuff around here. I'm the belle of the ball right now. So I come in to Detroit. Since I got that bonus, I got more money than most of the people except one person in all of the draft. And I was a skill receiver getting drafted, so that gives me more clout, a.k.a. more hyped up. Yeah, you can't tell me nothing. I'm going to do my drugs. I'm not saying me. I'm talking to Charles Rogers. I'm going to do my drugs. I'm going to go out in the streets and hang out with my friends like a bunch of knuckleheads and do whatever I want to do because it's about me, because I got the accomplishment of getting the second round pick. You like how you're hearing a lot of I's and me's? That's how Charles Rogers was thinking. Poor guy, never had a chance. Only played, like I said, 14 career games as a second pick overall. One of the biggest busts in wide receiver history. Let's go into another one. Let's talk about one of the best players in Penn State history, ex-running back Blair Thomas. Blair Thomas was drafted by, go figure, the New York Jets in 1990 with the second pick overall. So they got a running back, second pick overall. I think the Jets just ruined his career because the 90s Jets were not anything to brag about. They've been on the decline since then. Like I said, he's one of the best players in Penn State history. Blair Thomas was one of the more notorious running backs to flop because in the NFL, just for the simple fact he's a second pick. After being selected with the second pick, Thomas would rush for only 2,000 yards and 5 touchdowns, and he was bounced out of the league only 5 years later to who would have thought? One of the best years of all time, 1995, a.k.a. when I was born. Yes. Great year. Not for Blair Thomas, though. He got kicked out. Yes, you're saying 2,000 yards is still a lot of yards. Okay, think about it. From 1990 to 1995, if he got 2,000 yards and had a median, like an average what he rushed per year, it was 400 yards per year. And he only had 5 touchdowns. So he averaged 400 yards and 1 touchdown a year for 5 years as a second pick overall, and you're telling me that's not a bust? I don't think so. A bigger bust than him, though. Ex-Cleveland Brown quarterback Tim Couch. Tim Couch was drafted in Cleveland in 1999. Round 1, first pick. You have everything at your disposal. You are the number 1 pick. We trust you. We're here for you. You're Trevor Lawrence to us. But he's the worst pick in Cleveland Browns history. He was a star at Kentucky in his sophomore and junior seasons. But when he tried to revive his career back on the Browns, it just wouldn't work. Just to put it, Couch didn't have what it took to be an NFL quarterback and lasted only 6 years in the league. You're only lasting 6 years in the league, so you're only there till 2005. So you're only there from 1999 to 2005. The Cleveland Browns, it's funny because all these teams and all these draft guys are, they are bad picks. They end up being, biggest bust in NFL history. But look at the franchises. The Jets, I told you, the Lions. I told you the what was that other team? The Browns right now. Yeah, Tim Couch, terrible career, 22-37 overall, 59% completion percentage, threw for over 11,000 yards. But you're first pick overall. Your best season was 7-9, 59% throwing, and 21 interceptions. Get out of here! That was terrible. You're not helping anyone. You're not doing anything. So he had his whole little career till 2005, booted out. Tim Couch, definitely one of the bigger busts in NFL history. If you want to get to even funnier ones, to me, Vince Young. He was definitely a huge bust. He was drafted the 3rd pick overall in the 2006 draft by the Tennessee Titans. Played 6 seasons in the NFL. Yes, you could argue that Vince Young went to a Pro Bowl. His first year, he helped the Tennessee Titans go to the playoffs. But the biggest problem is that he didn't sustain any of it. He only had 8,964 passing yards throughout his whole career, which, like I said, Tom Brady eclipsed that in 2 years of being in his 40s. Only made the Pro Bowl his first year, his rookie year. Also won Rookie of the Year. He went 8-5, 2,100 yards throwing. How many rushing yards did he have? Because I know he was a big rusher. But in total, Vince Young had over 634 fantasy points, but 46 touchdowns to 51 interceptions. Get out of here. He's even that rookie year where everyone's like, oh, well, what about that year? He did throw 12 touchdowns and 13 picks. Like, come on now. You have more interceptions than touchdowns with a 51% completion percentage. And then the next year, you're going to give me 9 touchdowns and 17 interceptions. Just big bust. He beat one of the better college football teams in history. The USC Trojans, who had Matt Leinart. They had Reggie Bush. They had Lendale White. And it's so funny that I'm just literally naming all these guys. And these guys all pretty much busted in the NFL, even though they were spectacular. Like one of the best college football teams in the nation, because they weren't losing, and Matt Leinart was the golden child. But yeah, let's get into Matt Leinart, who was definitely one of the worst draft picks of all time. Matt Leinart was drafted number 6 overall by the Arizona Cardinals. Only played 2 years in the league, and he was out. That's sad. That's just sad. That's just sad because Matt Leinart was a Heisman contender. He was one of the best college quarterbacks in the nation at the time, but he just couldn't pull through with it on the Arizona Cardinals. And the Arizona Cardinals, another team that doesn't really bring up quarterbacks until Kyler Murray this year. They try to get Josh Rosen. They try to get him. Yes, they brought back Carson Palmer's career and Kurt Warner, but they don't develop quarterbacks. They already get quarterbacks developed that come to them, and they just refine it. And that was due to Bruce Arians, who's now on the Tampa Bay Bucks. Go figure. The Tampa Bay Bucks are still going to keep getting richer. Let's talk about an Alabama running back who made me scared of drafting Alabama running backs in the future. Trent Richardson. He went in the first round, 3rd overall pick in the 2021 draft, but in the 2012 draft, but he only had 2,000 yards rushing in total and 17 touchdowns. His best year was his rookie year. We had 950 yards and 11 touchdowns. But Trent Richardson, due to weight problems and just a lack of conditioning, he only survived in the NFL 4 years, rushed for 1,000 yards on the Cleveland Browns and 11 touchdowns, and then rushed for 977 on the second half of his career for the Indianapolis Colts and 6 touchdowns. He's out. He's playing college football, or he's playing football somewhere else. I think it's the United States League or the AFL or the CFL, but he's not part of our fantasy football league, so he's someone we are not going to get into. Just Trent Richardson. He made me scared to draft Derrick Henry that year where he popped off. Last year, I changed my mind about it. I didn't want Josh Jacobs. I didn't want Kenyon Drake. I didn't want any of these guys because they're Alabama cornerback. Mark Ingram started to, pave the way a bit because when he got his career revitalized on the Baltimore Ravens, then you were able to see, okay, Alabama running backs are just strong running backs who can run it down. Now you hear me screaming from the rooftops, Najee Harris, number one. Like that SpongeBob episode, he was number 1. Yes, Najee Harris should be the top running back taken off, even if there's that scare of Alabama running backs. That's done now. Josh Jacobs shown it. Kenyon Drake has shown it. It's funny they're on the same team as well. And Derrick Henry has by far showed it, especially after this 2,000-yard rushing performance, solidifying himself as the best, probably Alabama rusher of all time. Another bust is RG3. Yes, I understand. RG3 did have a good year at one point, but after his first year of throwing over 3,000 yards and over 600 yards rushing, steady decline, never was the same. And Washington, they were known as a different team at the time, but we're not going to say that name. But the Washington football team at the time was not something stellar. He went 9-7, and RG3 had to do it all on his own. He was also, don't forget, his offensive coordinators were Kyle Shanahan and Sean McVay and Matt LaFleur at one point. So he had all the quarterback guru and geniuses on his side and all of the offensive-minded guys on his side. But almost to a fault, to where when they left, it was proven that they left. And I mean, RG3, what's good is he still has a career. He's a backup on the Ravens. But I mean, RG3 even had an opportunity this year when Lamar Jackson went out in the notorious poop game where he said he was cramping, but it looked like he needed to go to the restroom. RG3 was there to back him up, and he got hurt the first play. So it just shows you he's too injury prone. You can't trust him. He's only a backup, and he's just there for a scout quarterback. And scout quarterbacks, if you got to know, the coaches don't let you touch them. Don't let you touch. Well, they let you touch scout quarterbacks more, but they don't let you touch quarterbacks in general in practice because there's no point in hurting the goods, the franchise goods. So RG3 is never going to get that ability to be the number one guy again. He's just there for knowledge. He's the least bustiest out of all of them just because of his longevity. But what his potential was from being a Heisman out of Baylor to his rushing dual threat ability to being a more accurate Michael Vick, let's temper those expectations a bit. But Vince Young is not one of the only mobile quarterbacks that ended up becoming a bust. Mitchell Trubisky. Everyone doesn't ever want to make him forget that he was picked in front of Patrick Mahomes and Deshaun Watson. And if you really want to go into it, Josh Allen as well. And not only that, but the Bears traded up to get Mitchell Trubisky. The main thing that makes Mitchell Trubisky a bust is the simple fact that they really drafted 3 of these Pro Bowl quarterbacks, one that led the league in passing yards in Deshaun Watson, one that also led his team to an AFC championship in Josh Allen, and one that led his team to a Super Bowl in Patrick Mahomes. And that is why Mitchell Trubisky literally got booted out of the Bears to go as a backup to Josh Allen, who was drafted behind him in the draft. It's hilarious. I was also thinking for a second, I doubted myself because I was saying, oh, Mitchell Trubisky, I guess his nickname's Mr. Biscuit, according to the internet, which makes absolutely no sense. I guess he crumbles like a biscuit. That's the only thing that makes sense. He had a 29-21 record. So I'm thinking to myself, okay, I guess he's not a bust. Wrong. Tim Tebow had an 8-6 record. I know it wasn't the same volume, but still, same result. Mitch Trubisky, couple years in the league, and now he's a backup to a quarterback who Josh Allen shouldn't. I don't know why I have this terrible and nasty habit of jinxing people, but he shouldn't get hurt in the upcoming years. So Josh Allen is someone that Mitch Trubisky is not really going to come in for at all at any point in the short term. So Mitch Trubisky is just going to be a glorified backup. He's just they're going to give him like the Jameis Winston love, except Jameis Winston's actually getting more love for the Saints. He's a borderline bust. I'm not too sure. We have to figure out what he does with the rest of his career because he did benefit from having Byron Leftwich, Bruce Arians, and Sean Payton all as his coaches, as opposed to some other quarterbacks like Johnny Manziel. Johnny Manziel is a bust that you never, ever forget just because he was so cocky, so arrogant coming out of college. He did his whole little money thing, his whole money dance. He also won the Heisman Trophy, being the best player in all of college football at a year that had a lot of studs like Jadeveon Clowney, just a bunch of absolute animals all throughout the country, but all he showed for it was a 2-6 record, 56.7% completion percentage, which is awful, only a couple percent more than Tim Tebow's overall career, and he had only 1,600 yards, 7 touchdowns, 7 interceptions on the split. If you really want to know his fantasy points, he only had 106. Kickers have more than that. in a whole season. Big bust. Both of them, it's funny because we're just sticking on the quarterbacks. Might as well just keep hopping on them. Jamarcus Russell, someone we will never forget, went number 1 overall in the 2007 draft. No one's ever going to forget that. First year starting, went 5-10 through 53%, which is just terrible. If you're in the 50s, you are not a good quarterback in the NFL. You have to be in the 60s to be good to great. He threw 53%, 2,400 yards, 13 touchdowns and 8 interceptions. You're like, oh, that's decent, right? And then he just completely took a tank the next year. Threw 3 touchdowns, 11 picks. This man is awful. Once again, only had 184 career fantasy points. That means a kicker like Justin Tucker and Harrison Butker outscored him this year. You can't have that. Only had 18 touchdowns throughout his whole career. I'm pretty sure Julian Edelman has more touchdowns than that. That's why he's a Hall of Famer. Only 4,000 yards. Old Tom Brady throws that much in a single season. Jamarcus Russell is a bust. You would think, right? 6'6", 250. He's a big guy. He could get mobile. He won a national championship at LSU, so he showed that he comes up in the big games. He should help out the Raiders, right? Wrong. Just wrong. They even were so weary of him at one point that they gave him a blank disc and said, oh, check out this film and let us know what you think. And then they come back to say, hey, what'd you think about the film? And then he said, oh, yeah, like this, it was cool that this was in it, this was in it, this was in it, and there was nothing on the tape at all. That just showed how lazy and egotistical Jamarcus Russell was and what he had. He didn't give you fantasy points. He only made people sad like Mitchell Trubisky and Johnny Manziel. You can't trust them. Mitchell Trubisky, I guess, since he's on the Bills and he has Sean McDermott, we'll see how second leg goes. He's in that Jameis Winston category, but I think he's a bust just because he went in front of those 3 guys. And those 3 guys are going on to have great NFL careers besides him. Thank you for listening to the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast, where we make you from a novice, however you want to say it, into a champion, however you want to say it as well. Doesn't matter. If you're not first, you're last over here. Thank you for listening. Make sure you like, subscribe, and follow us at Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Remember, Twitter, if you want to get to reach me, just DM us at GSMC_fantasy football. If you want to talk about anything fantasy football, if you want any advice, just go to the Twitter. It's probably the easiest way to get a quick response from me, and I'll give you the best advice to my fullest capabilities. I'm not going to tell you to get Odell Beckham. I'm not going to tell you to get T.Y. Hilton, Julio Jones. I'm not a foolish man. I'm here to be real about it all. Thank you once again for listening to the best fantasy football podcast there is, and have a good night.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Fantasy Football Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. From movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.